Hello, everybody. Before I begin this class, let me tell you a story. And this is something I see very, very much in the hospital. So, the provider finished the conversation and they either don't know how to say goodbye or how to close a conversation. So they end up staying way more time than they need to. As an interpreter, I see this all the time. The provider just stands there, and I get it. They're trying not to be rude. They're trying not to be disrespectful, especially specifically the residents, first year residents. They just stand there, and they don't know how to close a conversation. And one thing that defines us, people from Latin America, is that we love to talk. And so if you don't close the conversation is going to drag on forever. So let me teach you how to first of all how to say hello, and also how to close the conversation. So when the conversation hits that point where you have all the things that you need, the medical history, you have introduced yourself, you have let them know what the plan is, you know how to close the conversation, and you can walk out of the room without sounding or without projecting a disrespectful attitude. So let's start. This class is going to be called How Are You Feeling Today? Number 2. If you haven't seen the first video, make sure you watch it. Now, a courtesy hello, of course, hola is the one that everybody uses. Now, of course, there are other ways of interacting with patients. Hola is usually how everybody says hello to the patient, and this is fine. A very common way of saying hello. However, I'm going to teach you how to say, how to say it another way so that you're projected a little bit more fluent per se. So we have two options for you. Either one is fine. We have on the left, mucho gusto, and on the right, we also have un placer. Now, oftentimes you'll see this one, mucho gusto, translated as nice to meet you. And un placer, of course, is a pleasure. Now, it depends on the context. They pretty much mean the same thing. They both project a polite, friendly attitude towards your patients. So you can use either one, and they pretty much mean the same thing. Now, you can use it at the beginning of a conversation or at the end of the conversation. And let me give you some examples. So you can say, mucho gusto, soy el doctor Smith. ¿Cómo está? That's Spanish for nice to meet you. I am Dr. Smith. How are you? Very straightforward, very respectful. If you can just memorize that one, that's all you need. You don't even need to learn another one. That's pretty standard. You can also begin a conversation. Maybe a lot of instructors out there are gonna disagree with me. I even do this. I say it all the time. It may seem that un placer, a pleasure, comes at the end of the conversation, but you can also, use it at the beginning. It's like saying it's a pleasure to meet you in Spanish. You can just begin it with un placer. Soy la doctora Smith. ¿Cómo le puedo ayudar? A pleasure. I am Dr. Smith. How can I help you? Very straightforward. Now you can even use them together. If you're in a hurry, if you want to be polite, in a rush, I guess, you can say mucho gusto, un placer, and then continue your conversation. Either cómo está or cómo le puedo ayudar, or maybe you have your own little thing that you like to say. When you start to learn a language, you kind of put together your own phrases and how you usually interact with English-speaking patients. So if you have your own little thing, perfectly fine. These are just examples. This is not the only way. This is just a way of doing it. Now, if you're ending in conversation, this is what you can say at the end. You can say, bueno, me despido, mucho gusto, which is Spanish for, well, let me say goodbye, nice to meet you. Very formal, very well received. And if you want to use that one, go right ahead. If you want a little bit more complex, you can use number 2. Bueno, si no tiene preguntas, mucho gusto. and you can just walk out of the room or start walking out of the room. That means, well, if you do not have any questions, nice to meet you. It was nice to meet you. Or you can just simply say, fue un placer. It was a pleasure. Very common. You're going to sound a lot more fluent when you start using these options. And my personal preference is using mucho gusto, un placer. And it sounds redundant to some people, but trust me, it is natural and a lot of people use it. Now, when saying goodbye, and this is what I mean when some providers don't know how to close a conversation. Again, I'm not trying to say to be rude or anything like that. I'm just saying sometimes you just need to learn how to close a conversation because you have more patience and the conversation will drag on forever. Trust me. These are the top three that I like to use. You can say, of course, everybody's favorite, adios, goodbye. You can say hasta luego, see you soon. Or my personal favorite, ha sido un placer. It has been a pleasure. Now, how do you close it? You hit that point where you're both quiet for a few seconds before they start to talk or family member starts to talk. And that's when you should close the conversation. When you've already collected a history, like I said, they've told you everything that they need to tell you. You guys reviewed everything. They say they don't have any questions, and this is your closure. This is the last thing that you say. One of these three, but you can before you do, you can say bueno, which means well. You can say bueno, adios, bueno, hasta luego, or my personal favorite, bueno, ha sido un placer. And you can just walk out of the room. And again, you're not being rude, you're not being disrespectful. This is very respectful and polite interactions. I hope these are helpful. Again, a lot of you need to learn how to close a conversation, and this is the way to do it. If you found this helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and go to the Instagram where I post daily content and you can find more free study material. Thank you very much.